Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I want to start out the show by saying that we have a Marine Corps vet on today. So thank you so much for your service. That's awesome. And I'm going to read this. I rarely do this, but this is worded so well that I'm going to read this because it's just a cool start. So we're talking to somebody with a 20-year, he's a 20-year sales guy who got tired of living other people's dreams and making them wealthy. And I tell you what, if you stop right there, that's a lot of people that are listening today. And so if that's you listening today, then you are in for a treat. And it says, so what did I do? I took the biggest risk in my life and opened up my own business called Success Champions. So if I stopped right there, everyone's thinking, oh my gosh, this is awesome. The guy gets tired of working for the man, jumps in and does it on his own. And I'm reading this and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And then I read these next words and I'm like, what? And it says, and ran it straight into the ground. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want this dude on my podcast, And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Then I realized the next word says I had no clue how to be a business owner. So I'm like, that's it. I got to get this guy on my show. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Donnie Boivin. How are you today, sir?
Good, Dave. Thanks. That's probably one of the funnest ways I've ever heard somebody go through that. So good on you. Good on you.
Well, I was like, oh my gosh, normally I opened up my own business and then,
I made millions overnight and
gates of heaven opened up, and just crap fall from the sky. And you just couldn't believe how, I'm throwing money away because it's so darn successful. But, so we want to unpack that story today. You're the founder and creator of Success Champion Networking. So fill us in on that story. So you went from corporate America to doing it on your own. Is that you were a sales guy? So life was good, I'm assuming, as a sales guy.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, in some circumstances, I was living the quote unquote American dream, right? I had a great paying job. I picked up partner in my sales training firm and was going to retire doing sales training.
Okay.
And, I turned 40 and just had the epiphany, man, that I'd made a lot of money over the years, but the companies I worked for made a hell of a lot more. And so it was during that year when I turned 40, I was listening to a lot of guys like Gary Vee, Tim Ferriss, Tom Bilyeu, and they were all talking about this idea of being an entrepreneur, go out and start a business. And they really made it sound like it was going to be a freaking cakewalk. And me personally, I was cocky enough to think that I could go do this being a damn good sales guy that sold millions upon millions of dollars in my time, that this was going to be easy. Well, when I launched my company, I was instantly, because I didn't remember signing a non-compete, put under a non-compete and couldn't talk about sales training. The only thing I freaking knew. So strike number one is I didn't understand that my entire life was a series of other people telling me what to do.
Sure.
To now running a company with nobody telling me what to do. Strike two, I can't talk about sales, which was the only thing I knew at this point.
Yeah.
Strike three, I had no idea what it meant to be a freaking business owner, right? Yeah. I hardly even saw the CEOs of the companies I worked for, let alone understood what they did. So it was the scariest thing I ever did in my life. We literally almost lost our farm. My wife had to cash in a 401k to save the farm. Her Jeep actually got repossessed during that time, and part of her 401k cash in was to get her Jeep back. But through a lot of freaking struggles, a lot of ups and downs, we turned it around to 3 companies, 5 best-selling books, top podcast, and a partridge in a pear tree.
So it sounds like you owe somebody something, hey? So she saved your ass.
Oh, trust me. Thank God she's a ride or die, dude. Because man, that phrase, whoever quoted the phrase behind every man's a damn good woman, I don't give a shit if it's guy or girl. There's always somebody behind you.
Sure.
I'm writing the book right now about her called The Shit My Wife Said That Changed My Life.
Okay.
And somebody said I should just call it Yes Dear, but
way easier, right?
Right. But yeah, no, she's been a rock star through this whole thing.
Well, that's awesome. Well, and you bring up a great point that I want to start out with, Donnie. I mean, it's safe to say that, risk and reward go pretty much hand in hand. Whoever's willing to take that risk should be the one get the reward. And that's where I think, in corporate America today, these companies are taking the risk, so they're the ones getting the reward. And if
I
you're
agree with that.
uncomfortable with that type of arrangement, this is one of the ways that you can address that is by jumping into something on your own. You didn't have any experience in the business world. You had the sales training, the
Well,
sales experience. What was your business experience like on a scale
yeah.
of 1 to 10?
Oh, shit, that's hard to say because as a kid, I worked in a Fortune 500, right? I worked for Cardinal Health
Okay.
through one of their subsidiaries selling franchises. And that, I mean, I say kid, I was 22, 23, 24.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say, what were you, like 9? I was
Yeah,
like, oh, yeah, you started her
So,
young, huh?
yeah, as you get a little bit older, you start calling yourself a kid a lot, later in
Sure.
life,
Yep.
And my last career was with an organization called Sandler Training. So we trained in a lot of corporate settings, but
Sure.
I was really more part of the small mom and pop life. So I never really saw the operational side of things because my job was to go sell.
Yep.
And in the sales training, the operational side of things was delivering training. You sold it, you trained it. So you eat what you killed there. And so I never saw the maintenance of accounts. I never saw the financial cash flow. I never saw, the operational systems and strategies. So when I launched my company, instead of trying to build a business, I created a really shitty job for myself and it didn't pay well
Sure.
because I was doing everything that I did as an employee, but as a business owner. And I had to, and it took me sitting across from a friend, and he goes, "Hey, explain me your business." And as I explain my business, he starts laughing. And I said, "What the hell are you laughing at?" He goes, "Dude, you don't have a business. You have a really shitty job." And I'm like, "Holy hell." So I remember having to go back and go, okay, what does a CEO think about? What does a business
Sure.
owner think about? And had to start reframing it. And, this is why, my biggest purpose in life now is to help as many people find freedom in their lives through building a business because it's really, really hard building a company. If
Sure.
anybody tells you otherwise, they're a fool. Because there's just so much you got to work on yourself and make a business happen. And it just so happens, I think building a business is the greatest tool for self-discovery in the world.
Well, and that's funny because I think you probably heard a lot of breaks go on right there as soon as you say work on yourself, because that's probably one of our weaknesses as entrepreneurs and business owners. It's super easy to work on other people. It's super easy to work on your customer, your team, your vendors. I mean, boy, we have that down pat. But as soon as you want me to work on myself, Donnie, it's like, what do you mean work on myself? I mean, what are some things that you had to kind of discover on your own for yourself on that journey?
Well, and for your listeners' sake, I completely empathize with everything you just said because people all my life said you got to work yourself, know yourself, all that stuff, and I never understood what the hell that actually meant.
Right.
And okay, I'm reading books, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm going to seminars. What the hell? How come I don't know myself? And
Sure.
here's what it means to truly understand yourself. Here, to know yourself, to understand yourself means you need to understand why you react the way you do when something happens. Why do those particular emotions come to the surface? So, if I get pissed off, why am I actually pissed off? What caused that? Where does that come from? Am I pissed off at the thing right now, or am I pissed off at the thing that happened years ago in my life? And this is making me feel like I'm revisiting that particular moment. Oh, I think the toxic positivity, culture that a lot of us grew up on really force fed us this idea of you always got to be happy, you always got to think wonderful. And it's really just another drug that people got devoured into because always they were now letting themselves actually express emotions and feel anything. So as a business owner, getting pissed off has actually been one of the greatest tools I've had in creating things. Like at one point we have, our Badass Business Summit. And so for the Badass Business Summit, we can't advertise it. Because we can't run ads because of the word badass. And it was really chapping my ass that we couldn't do that. So we got really, really, really creative and just got out of the box. And because I was so mad that we couldn't do traditional ads, we had to go find all these other crazy ass ways to promote the summit.
Sure.
And, people don't want to lean on those emotions. So they always are faking it, or they're lying to themselves. So they've never given themselves a chance to discover themselves. The second thing that I would say in there, and I don't want to cannibalize your entire show, because
No, that's what you're here for. Go for it.
But the second side of that is, so understand the emotion. Cool. Now decide, do I keep that emotion and then go fuck up again? Right? Because you got to find yourself in that same situation multiple times, catch that reaction, adjust that reaction, and go again. And what happens for most people is they get to that awkward feeling or an uncomfortable feeling or a moment where they don't feel right, however you want to define right, and they instantly stop doing that thing. This is why most people fail in sales.
Sure.
Because the people who find success in sales, they've done 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 sales calls, right? So they're used to the rejection that comes from that. Right? It's the same thing in business, right? You've got to go do the thing. So, the greatest tool I've ever used in my life to truly understand the man in the mirror is the mirror. Like the night that I told my wife that we were about to lose a farm, literally the bank had sent a notice that they were likely going to try and foreclose on a farm, right? So we were 3 months behind on the mortgage. She and I agreed that she was going to cash in her 401k. That night I went up to my mirror and I tried to do something really, really stupid. Well, not stupid, but funny for me. It sounded stupid in my head, which was I looked at the mirror and tried to say the words, "I love you." And I couldn't do it. It just felt too awkward. So I changed the words up and said, "I'm proud of you." And I instantly went, "No, you're not." And I'm like, okay, why am I not? And it's like, because you're not holding up your end as a husband. You're not holding up your end as a business owner. You're not holding up your end as a salesperson. You're not doing the things you need to do.
Sure.
So I started to go to work on those things. The mirror became the thing I started doing on a daily basis, going to the mirror and going, okay, I'm proud of you. And anytime something popped up that I was not proud of, that was the thing I had to go work on or fix. And once I got the business started turning, because I was starting to actually focus on the business, I went to the mirror one night and said, I'm proud of you. And the first thing that popped up is, no, you're not. You're not spending time with your wife. I'd focused all my time and energy into the business and not working on her. So now I had to go fix that. But yeah, you got to get to work on yourself. And that once again goes back to understand why you react to the things you react to.
Well, and I tell you, working on yourself takes so many forms. So I think that the goal here is to include yourself in your discovery process as you're talking about what your business is supposed to look like, as you're talking about, what difference you want to make in the world, whatever, how much money you want to make. I mean, it really, it's easy to bypass ourselves. And, we do a lot of emotional intelligence work, and, people have blind spots. People are not self-aware. So, if you're listening today and this is new for you, that's okay. Just kind of hang with us for a little bit. Because it's real easy to jump out of where you are. And it's funny, if you look at a comfort zone, there's in between your comfort zone and your growth zone is that spot called the fear zone. And that's where we come up with excuses. Oh, this will never work. I mean, here's, Donnie standing in front of a mirror. Did you videotape any of this? Were you talking to yourself in front of the mirror? Or is that all?
No, that'd be an interesting experiment. I wonder how much it would change the storyline of that. So I may have to try that. I mean, I've recorded myself several times, like speaking, on stages and everything, just to get better at the art of speaking on stage. But I've never done it, saying them. So that's an interesting one.
Yeah, and it's so vulnerable. I mean,
For
that's
sure.
the thing that a lot of business owners, they don't want to be vulnerable, right? They don't want to open up. They don't want to be empathetic,
I
So,
think more business owners get there faster than anybody else. And the reason I say that is because once you get to the point of running out of excuses, because
right?
you realize there's no excuse left when you're running a business. When you work for somebody else, man, success is your fault, failure is your fault, right? But when you work for somebody else, it's really easy. The marketing sucks, the lead sucks,
Yep.
the community sucks, whatever. You can blame everything, and they're legitimate excuses, right? That you can
Yep.
use.
Sure.
But when you run the business, you don't get that luxury and those, right? You can't go, the economy sucks, the leads. That's your job. Go figure it out. Go
Yep.
figure out the business that'll work in the economy. Leads suck. Well, go fix your marketing, right? Marketing sucks. Hire better people, whatever. But you don't get those excuses. And then once you get to that point of life where you have ownership over everything you do, then you're able to say, fuck it, I'm going to put myself out there, figure out who I am. And you're going to get rattled on the chin, right?
Yep. Yep.
And you'll see the people that have truly done real work on themselves. They're the ones that are able to get out and talk and put original thought out. Everybody else is just doing sound bites.
Right.
You
Yep.
want to look for the people that are not necessarily influencers, but their content by nature pisses somebody off. Not by intent, but by the nature of the content they put out there, because they have beliefs that they stand in. And, when you find those people, those are the people that are most likely done the most work on themselves, because they have real beliefs that they can defend without getting emotionally charged from defending those beliefs.
Sure. Yep. Well, and I think it's funny because, even I struggle with it still. It's like so easy to blame your competition or the weather or the government or your customer or your team, right? I mean, it's easier to do that because then you don't look in that mirror and you're like, oh my gosh, you know what? The government did this or the weather did that. So, so I challenged myself and I challenge everybody listening to, what, at the end of the day, Donnie's 100% right. This comes right back to us. You can blame if you want, but it sure doesn't add any value to your day. I mean, nothing changes when it's like, whoo, good, I can blame my competitor. Okay, so now what,
Well, you're right. I mean, and here's why so many people blame. They're blaming because they don't want to learn.
Yep.
And I'll dive deeper in that. So if I can blame the government for doing something that affects my business, if I can blame them, now I'm off the hook. Right now, I have
Yep.
a dopamine actual dump pump, whatever you want to call it, rush,
Yep.
and I've been able to shift all the learning, all the experience, all the awkward feelings off to something else. Right? That's now the government's thing. If I take ownership of it and go, okay, the government made this decision. Now that's my fault. They made that decision. I should have been thinking way ahead of that. So now you instantly, from the idea of going them to it's my fault, as soon as you say it's my fault, and I don't give a shit what breaks. As soon as you say it's my fault, the brain immediately switches over to the fix it mode, which is my favorite place. So I don't care what breaks in my company. If an employee screws something up, if podcast episode gets fried, whatever happens, the team will tell you the first words out of my mouth says, "Sorry guys, that's my fault."
Yeah.
Because I either hired that person, I came up with that process, that strategy, whatever else, it comes back to me. And it drives some of them nuts. But as soon as I say it's my fault, I don't go into the victim state of, man, I wish that didn't happen. It instantly goes to, all right, let's play offense. Cool. How do we keep that from not happening again? What do we do to fix that thing? How
Sure.
do we make sure it doesn't occur again? And it's such a more freeing way to live life versus on your haunches and heels and passing a buck off to somebody else.
Wow, that's really a great spot to be, Donnie. When you think about that as a listener right now, what is your first response to when somebody accuses you of something? or your first response when you see a problem. It's so easy to shoot somebody else down. It's so easy to, blame them. So what I heard out of that is take a second and like look at yourself, or just get in the habit of, oh my gosh, that's on me. I mean, it's hard to say it's on me, because let's be real, as business owners, that's one of the reasons that we became a business owner. Maybe deep down in our heart was so we could, blame other people, so that we could not have to have the responsibility land on us. And in reality, it's the exact opposite of that. Everything does land on us.
Well, I would say most people started businesses because they actually didn't want to work.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yep. So they and I'm just as guilty of this. So this is not me slinging shit at anybody. But I really thought, I had it in my head that, as a sales guy, I kind of made my own schedule. As long as I was the top producer, nobody bothered me. And so I had that kind of framework in my head as I launched a business. Is cool. I get to set my own hours, work when I want to. What I didn't realize is I was in for a dogfight, and was going to have to outwork my own beliefs to be able to make this go. And I think most people, because they're trying to figure out how to get paid without doing anything, not understanding that you're paid as the direct result of what you put out and the effort and energy you put out. And I'm not the hustle and grind guy. I'm the do the work until the damn work's done. But if people are trying to build a business because it's going to be that next silver bullet lottery ticket winning thing, you're better off staying in corporate America, because it's going to be the toughest thing you ever do to build a business, because it's literally, it's hard to build a business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to go back to something that that kind of back into your past. So you run this thing into the ground. You realize that we may have made a miscalculation, we'll call it. What were some of the things that you found? How did you dig your way out of that? What are some things that happened to kind of combat that?
The funniest thing at all was I found podcasting, and I truly mean this. And I tell everybody, podcasting saved my business, and here's how. So I found podcasting in April of 2014 because a buddy of mine gave me a shot, or April of 2018, sorry, gave me a shot to speak on a stage. And at this point, I was still under a non-compete. I couldn't talk about sales. So all I could do was tell my story and how I got to here. And so I went on that stage, gave a speech. A guy came around afterwards, like they do, to ask questions. And he said, "Hey, I love your story. Would you come tell it on my podcast?" And my first response to this guy is this, April, May 2018 was somewhere in there. And I'm like, what the hell is a podcast? So, he had to break it down for me. But from there, I ended up launching my first show in May of 2018. And I launched that show to get around people that were business owners, because I had no entrepreneurs in my life. I had no business owners in my life. So I was trying to find myself in the right conversation so I could learn this thing called business. And so I was getting in some really cool conversations. Well, that podcast took off. And, within 5 months, it was number 22 in the world. Wow. And was just dominating. And I was getting the opportunity to interview some of the biggest names in the world. And I realized that if these people were asking to be on the podcast, I could not have a shit show of a process and a system. So I had to start outsourcing. So it's when I learned to outsource. And that was really a rough experience for me, trying to figure out how to find the right video editors and the like. I had to learn how to put systems in place, because if I'm going to outsource, I got to be able to tell them what to do and how do we track. And, so I learned that. I started talking to some amazing cash flow people and business experts that were teaching me different things. And so I learned how to build a business because of the podcast. And so we still use a lot of the principles I learned back then from, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. Right? If it's not a process or system, then it's not a thing. Because if I'm the one in the company doing it, it doesn't have a right process and system, because I have one job. My job is to be out front and be the face of the damn company, do things like get on podcasts, get on stages, workshops, all the
Yep.
things to keep the brand out front.
Sure.
Right. So everything else has to get off my plate. And I learned all this because, editing a podcast, as you probably know, sucks. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of moving pieces and it takes a lot of time to edit a good show. Marketing a podcast is a tremendous amount of work, to get out there. Right. So I had to learn, okay, well, I can't afford to pay all these people. So now I was learning how to barter early on and trade shit. And
Sure.
dude, I did so many crazy trades to get things done until we could start affording to hire staff. And now, like the Growth Mode podcast, we have, I think, 19 people on that team now
Wow.
developing that podcast. So, but it's a podcast and YouTube. So,
Sure.
but you have to find yourself in situations to where you're forced to learn. And it kind of goes back to the ownership. You can't shift that learning off to somebody else. You've got to go through it so you know exactly what it's going to take to be able to put it together. So, I know how to edit videos now. I know how to edit audio. I know how to freaking create social content. And it's funny, skills stack. So everything I've learned, we've applied in the business moving forward, oftentimes giving that knowledge to somebody else and allowing them to create a process and system around it. So that was a long diatribe, but it's literally finding yourself in those situations where you're forced to learn.
So do you suggest to people to try to be a guest on a podcast? I mean, is that something that you think?
$1,000,000,000%.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the reason people think that podcast guesting is going to make them a rock star, right? And here's the truth. Very few podcasts are going to put you on the map, right? Because podcasts just don't get that many downloads overall. And what people don't understand is for me, podcast guesting does two things. First, and the most beautiful thing it does is allows you to learn how to tell your story, because you're going to sit across from someone just like this, ask a really cool, amazing questions, and you got to be quick on your feet.
Sure.
And what most people don't know is how to tell their story, how they got to where they are in their journey. Second thing it does is establishes your personal brand in the marketplace. Because you're learning to tell your story, you're going to learn how to come up with your own original thought and not these sound bites, so you can go have these cool conversations. The soundbite conversations will happen because you may do a lot of podcast interviews and you get asked the same generic ass questions over and over and over again. So you come up with the same answers and now you sound like a skipped record when you go on all these other shows.
Sure.
But the ability to come have a dual conversation where it's the back and forth and real thought behind it is what will freaking change your world, because now you're able to put out original thought content, which is the strongest thing you can do for a personal brand.
So how does that kind of tie into your networking piece that you're, really pushing and trying to promote? Because again, everybody, Donnie, loves the word networking. They're scared to death of it. They have no clue probably how to do it. I mean, I love watching people stand in a room and try and work the room. And it's, more often than not, it's an epic fail, right? So, is kind of the podcasting and networking, first of all, are those similar to you and how that whole thing puts together?
Truthfully, I will tell you, podcasting is the greatest networking tool on the planet, even beyond our own networking groups, because the conversations before the interviews, the conversations after the interviews, I've picked up tons of clients that are host of podcasts just because I've been a guest on their show.
Sure.
And getting on podcast is not hard. There's programs like Podmatch, directories on Facebook, all kinds of things. I've got a VA team that's all they do is go get me on podcasts.
Sure.
But the networking is in general a business development tool. So podcast guesting is a business development tool. Social media is a business development tool. So it's a piece of your overall business development game. So what we did is we fixed and changed what most people hate about traditional networking. Because traditional networking, you go to this meeting, there's 30, 60 people around, you spend 45 minutes doing these stupid 60-second commercial things with dumbass jingles on the end that nobody cares about.
Yeah.
And then somebody gets up and fabricates a story about the old gray haired dude who in 1915 started their company, you know, and then they fabricate all these referral stuff. That's the networking that most people know.
Sure.
So what we did is we're like, all right, we're going to change all that model up. So we created a mastermind peer group that happens to have a networking problem, because my sole focus is on helping businesses grow so they can ultimately scale, right? So
Okay.
so we teach the business, and then they get networking. So it's every one of our groups around North America. You're going to go in and it's going to be people instantly going, "Hey, let's talk. Who can I open doors for you for? What you need help with in your business. Let me get you to that person." And it is an all out blitz on business growth, which leads to personal growth, which leads to you building and becoming part of a community, which allows you to actually properly build out a business and not make yourself an island,
Sure.
which is what I did when it got dark and I almost lost everything. I didn't want anybody to know how bad, things had gotten, because I thought if they knew how bad it was, then nobody would do business with me. But if you create an environment where people are going, dude, I'm just having a shitty week, and you
Yeah.
get other people like, all right, how can we help? What do you need?
Yep.
What are you working on?
Yep.
And when you create that environment, it changes everything.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, it's refreshing when you run into somebody that has the thought process, Donnie, that networking is about you, not me.
Yes.
So often I mean, I'll never forget, I was at an event and couldn't tell you the guy or anything, but I remember, and this was like early in my career, guy walks up to me, Donnie, with a half inch, literally a half inch stack of his cards. Never met the guy before, walks up to me and says, my name, can't even remember his name. We're going to call him Joe Blow. Hey, my name's Joe Blow, and this is what I do. And I introduce myself, and he says, hey, would you mind giving out these cards to all your friends?
I've not heard that one before.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh. And this is true story. I mean, and I'm like, I'm like, what in the world am I gonna do with a half inch of your cards? I'm like, do I have something between my teeth? Do I have like parsley in my teeth? Or because that's about all I'm gonna use that card for. So, I mean, from that perspective to the other perspective where nobody ever goes to network because they're scared to death of it. I mean, again, networking conjures up so many negatives, and I'd be lying if I said I never stopped halfway to a networking event and turned around and went home because I'm
I think
like,
we all have.
right? I'm just not into this today or whatever, right? So what's your big, if you had one kind of key takeaway for somebody at networking, or they're scared of it, they don't know how good or bad they're doing it. What's kind of a tip for them if they're listening right now?
I mean, truthfully, the answer is get over it, but people don't like that answer, so I will elaborate. Go get punched in the face, and I don't know anybody who's ever gone to a networking event and somebody just walked up and cold cocked the shit out of them, right? I've never heard of it happening. Maybe it has somewhere,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
But I tell people go get punched in the face, and the reason being is the only reason it's uncomfortable, only reason it's awkward, only reason you think you're doing it wrong, only reason it feels like something you don't want to do is because you haven't done it enough. Like I heard Alex Hermosi on his podcast say he's done 4,000 sales calls. And I started thinking over my career, I'm like, holy shit, I haven't done 4,000 and I've sold
Yeah.
millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and I'm like, God, how many? And I don't have any clue. I wouldn't even know how to fathom that. But I thought, no wonder he's so damn good at telling his style of sales, whether you
Sure.
like his style or not. But he's good at translating it because he's done it so many damn times. And of course, I also had the realization that he's sitting in a gym and people were just walking into him, so it's a lot easier to do that many reps.
Sure.
Um, but I think people need to look at whatever they're struggling with from the same perspective of, okay, I suck this time. How do I do this 1,000 more times so I no longer suck at this thing?
Yeah.
It's like I'm really learning YouTube videos right now, right? And so I've
Okay.
hired a team. and they're making fun of me because I'm fumble fucking things up trying to record videos and everything. And so, but I'm going through the process because I know it's like, Joe Rogan's still the top podcast in the freaking world.
Sure.
If you go find his early videos, man, he sucked. It was horrible. Right. But now he's done bajillions of freaking episodes. And so he's got the rhythm down. He's got the natural flow and everything. And so
Sure.
with everything is go get punched in the face doing the thing over and over again. So if networking events make you uncomfortable, freaking all right, commit that now you're going to do 100.
Sure.
Right. Start there. Then you get to 100.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Let's decide if this is a thing you want to continue doing. And if it's not something you want to continue doing because it's not feeding your business at that point, all right, go try something else. But
Yep.
don't just do the one and done and it felt awkward and get the hell out.
Yeah. Well, hey, Joe Rogan listens to this show, Donnie. So please, Joe, don't get pissed at me because he didn't like your early stuff. Okay.
Oh, I'm pretty sure Joe would tell you his early stuff sucks. So
well, and I think networking again is really it's such a powerful tool when it's used correctly, whether it's on a podcast as a guest, like you're, talking about, or you're one-on-one sitting in front of somebody. Do you feel like, is there a strategy, or sometimes I see people, they just show up, they don't really have a strategy. They don't have a goal. They don't really have any ideas what they're planning on doing. So do you suggest people just show up in that, get hit in the nads a few times, or is it a situation where you should have some preparation for your event?
So I'll answer it from two different contexts. So if you're going to like an after hours and like a chamber event, association, trade show, anything like that, I don't give a damn what door you walk through. So if it's, let's take a trade show, maybe there's several workshops or anything like that. If it's a chamber after hours, association after hours, you have one goal and objective, and that is to set 2 appointments before you leave the thing. Now, I'm not saying sales calls, 2 appointments.
Yep.
You find 2 people you do not know, and you find a time that you can either grab a Zoom virtual coffee, an in-person rum, because I like rum, coffee, whatever, but you do not leave that event without grabbing 2 meetings. And I'm talking scheduled on your damn calendar.
Awesome.
And I can hear a lot of your people are screeching tires right now, freaking the fuck out, right?
Yeah.
But here's the point. If you do not grab 2 meetings, and I'm not saying sales calls, I'm fucking get to know you for all I care.
Sure.
Grab 2 meetings from that event. As soon as you're done, you can go home. There's no point of staying at that event any longer. All you're going to do is drink more and make an ass of yourself, right? So go in, and I'm not saying walk up to people and go, cool, give me your calendar, let's find a time.
Sure.
Go chit chat, go small talk, make it all about them, freaking geek out on their world and their stuff. And if there's somebody that you're fascinated with that you could either get, a connection with, maybe a potential client with, whatever,
right?
Set the appointment, pull out the calendar and go straight at it.
Yep. Awesome. And I tell you what, I love that, because I tell people, if you walk in without a goal, and you just are going to meet people, hand out cards. I mean, if you don't walk away with 2 solid appointments for next steps, a great, one of the greatest tips that David Sandler ever shared was always have a next step, right?
Yep. Always.
And it's so crazy how, and then we're driving home and we feel like it was such a good, event. And I've talked with people and I'm like, how was your networking event last night? And they're like, oh my gosh, it was awesome. I met so-and-so and so-and-so. I'm like, so how many appointments, or, what was the outcome? Oh, nothing. I just gave them my card and they're going to call me if they need something. The mutual mystification that happens so often in those things is sick. And then people think that that's good. I mean, that's the sad part. And then they get pissed and frustrated when the guy or girl doesn't call. It's like, dude, that's on you.
100%.
If you didn't set that up right, you know what, that's on you. So
well, and I people think that somehow collecting a crap ton of business cards is like that ultimate win. I'm like, what are you going to do with the damn things? You're going to put them on your desk and then you're going to shuffle them from one side to the other because they just keep getting in your damn way. I would also add, if you're going to networking groups and you're visiting that, and you need to make a goal each week that you're going to find one person in that room that you can make an introduction for. Like you're going to introduce them, because people are all hung up on this idea of referrals, and they've got to get referrals. I will tell you that if you focus more on getting people to introduce you to the right damn people and quit
Yeah.
focusing on the people you need to sell to. So take somebody that maybe they do like drug testing as their business or their service, right? Very rarely are most of us going to find somebody that's going, "Hey, do you know anybody that does drug testing? I need to get my team." We just don't have those type of conversations often.
Yeah.
But if that person doing the drug testing company were able to tell me, go, "Hey, you know what? HR consultants, a lot of their clientele need drug testing, or a lot of manufacturing consultants, their clientele need to love drug testing." If you can tell me specifically who you need to get to, that'll help you form a circle of influence that you can
Yep.
help each other out. God, I
Yep.
can make so many more of those introductions. But people are so hung up on, because they're looking at networking as their sales tool, right? It's like anybody who says, referrals is the only way I grow my business, you're an
Yeah.
idiot, because
Yeah.
you just put your entire business development strategy in somebody else's hands,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So you need to be out selling, bringing what you sell back to a network, and have a whole bunch of other people that are doing that same thing, right? So if you understand that group of people that you meet with on a weekly basis, it's not their job to go sell
Right.
for you to get
Yeah.
you a referral. It's your job to help educate them on who you need to be introduced to so you can go
Right.
form those relationships
Yep.
to be able to open a shit ton of doors, because that introduction, you're likely to bring a whole lot of shit ton of stuff for them, and they're likely to bring a bunch back to you, and it becomes a dynamic, win for the both of you. So,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
last,
Absolutely.
hold on, one last really quick rant, and then
Yeah.
I'll stop. Sorry.
No, no, I
Um,
love it.
Networking was created by people who couldn't sell, right?
Yeah.
So most of the methodologies that have been taught have been taught by broke people who could not sell.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, when people tell you you need a jingle, or you need to, always have something that keeps you, top of mind, right? You need to always be asking for referrals and all that crap. It's built by people that don't know how to get their own business, so they have to rely on those tactics and strategies,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
Yep.
If you can
No,
go sell, networking so much better.
well, and again, it's, you may be listening and this may be ruffling feathers because you were taught a certain way. And that's kind of all the goal here is to give you a different viewpoint, look at something a little bit different. And, how you move forward is completely up to you. I think that most people don't network, period. They don't network. They don't ask for referrals. They just are working this thing so hard. I feel like the people at the mall, when you're walking down the mall and there's a little kiosk in the middle, and they're and as soon as you make eye contact with them, Donnie, it's like, oh crap, now I gotta answer questions about my gutters or my
Yeah,
windows, and no offense to those people, they make the world go round. I tell you what, I would much rather have somebody call me and say, hey, so and so wants to talk to you because of something I shared with them about you. That's a way more effective end result in my mind than having to stand at the kiosk,
agreed.
right? So we're just trying to make it a little easier for you. What that looks like for you at the end of the day, it is completely up to you. So as we start to land the plane today, what would your tip of the week be for anybody listening? It could be something that we covered, or maybe it's something that is just burning on your heart to get out to people. What do you got for us?
Go learn a skill set. One of the things that I continue to be fascinated with is the things that we're not successful at is because we haven't learned the skills to be successful at it. Um, I look at somebody like Tony Robbins as a good example. Whether you love him, hate him, I don't care. The
Sure,
dude's got 101 companies to the tune of like $15 billion, right? It's insane of what he's built.
sure.
If you took me as CEO of Success Champions and tried to put me as senior CEO of Tony Robbins companies, I'd fail fucking miserably, because I just don't have the knowledge and the skill
Sure.
sets to be able to run a company at that volume. Tony's got 40 years
Yeah.
of building and creating, and all the compounded skill knowledge he's learned over that time is awesome. So whatever you want to do, whatever you want to learn, and whatever you want to create or accomplish, you're gonna have to go learn the skills that are going
Sure.
to allow you to get there.
Yeah.
And that's, a lot of the foundations of how we've been able to build everything is skill acquisition.
Awesome. Well, and I'm guessing that you could kick his ass in marine stuff. So, you know, so you
I'd
know
go toe
what?
to toe with Tony on a lot of things. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, exactly. You know, he's probably listening again too. So don't get irritated at us, Tony. We're just trying to help. But I think that at the end of the day, we all have a strength and we all have something that we're really good at. And that's really sometimes hard for people. Go, excuse me, look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm really good at, and fill in the blank, because we're usually a lot harder on ourselves than we need to be. And so, you know, I appreciate you sharing that information. For somebody that's listening right now, that something in this last 40 minutes or so has really struck a nerve with them, and they're like, oh my gosh, I need to learn more about whatever it was that we talked about. What's the best way for that person, Donnie, to get in contact with you to to continue this conversation forward?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for that. And let me do one thing for you really
Yeah.
quick. Guys, if you've made it this far in the show and you're still hanging with us and you got like one tip, one trick, anything out of this, do Dave a favor and share this episode out, this Positive Polarity podcast. Freaking, I don't care if it's this episode or any of his other episodes. The hardest thing in the world of having your own podcast is building your audience. And
Yep.
so it would mean the world for him if you could just share this episode or one of his other episodes with somebody else, let them know why they should listen to it. It'll mean the world to him. So to get in contact with me, text the word success to 817-318-6030, and I'll send you a free video on how to get an endless stream of referrals coming into your business. And with this 10 different strategies of just how to make that rock. It's going to ask for your email. So of course we know where to send it, but text the word success, 817-318-6030, and we'll get that right over to you. And it'll give you all my social contact and all that too.
Holy cow, that's so cool. So if you are listening and you don't take him up on that, you know what? That's on you, which is fine. I'm totally cool with it. But you know what? We bring this each week. As you know, does Donnie brings he's 100 and some episodes in on his growth mode podcast. I mean, we do this for you to improve yourself. So if you pass on it, that's totally cool. Just don't get pissed at him or me if your sales aren't where they want to be, or your growth isn't where you want to be, whatever chunk of your world isn't where it wants to be, where it needs to be, whatever, that's really on you guys. So Donnie, thank you so much for hanging out, man. I learned a ton. This is so cool. I'm excited to see where this goes, and thank you for those tips and that phone number, and we will hit success on there and text it to that number. And again, can't wait to keep learning from you, and appreciate all you're doing.
Awesome, brother. I appreciate you having me on, man. A lot of fun.